Much like I talked about with Patrick Williams yesterday, but sitting around and there's been some things going on in my mind when it comes to the play of Zach LaVine this season. And while Zach LaVine isn't the problem with the Chicago Bulls, he definitely hasn't been part of the solution either. We're going to talk about it all and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. And for the second day in a row, I got an extra episode for you guys today. And this is another one that's kind of just things that have been on my mind. I'm going to give some data, things like that, of course, but overall, it's really just my thoughts. And so when it comes down to Zach LaVine, you guys know I've been pretty much a defender of Zach LaVine since I've started the show, as far as like what he is, what he can be, kind of his role. And I've understood, right? Zach LaVine, a number one option on the championship team, he is not, right? But he's a player that I feel like can still be a damn good player and still can contribute hugely to the team. But you do need to build a team around him that helps kind of limit some of the mistakes that he naturally makes and some of his own limitations. But one of the things that has been really concerning for the Chicago Bulls, the Bulls are struggling right now to start the season, only 10 games in. But I do want to talk about this. Zach LaVine so far in his play this season, and yeah, a little bit of this is from last night, seeing Zach LaVine score one field goal in 3 quarters, things like that. But Zach LaVine's play hasn't been the issue with the Chicago Bulls. I don't even think it's been the biggest issue with the Chicago Bulls. You can talk about rebounding. You can talk about rotations. You can talk about DeMar DeRozan and him both shooting one of the worst percentages of their career so far. But when it comes down to Zach LaVine, and let me make sure I say this in this video, whatever I say about Zach LaVine doesn't mean that there are not other players as well that are definitely going through things, and they may very well get their own video as well. But Zach LaVine, this was a season where coming into this offseason, when I was doing my player previews, I talked a lot about what I wanted to see from Zach LaVine. And while, some people look at Zach and say, hey, you could score 30 points per game, he could be this in scoring, he can be that. It wasn't about that for me with Zach LaVine. We've seen the Zach LaVine that can go out there and score, drop it on people's heads, do all these type of things. But it's more so about Zach LaVine stepping up in the biggest moments for the Chicago Bulls. That's what I personally wanted to see from Zach. Didn't mean that he's still not going to make his issues. It still doesn't mean he's not going to have his turnovers, bounce the ball off his foot, some of the bad passing, things like that. But when it comes down to it, right, and you guys know, I don't like to be hyperbolic. I don't like to, to fearmonger or anything like that. Zach LaVine has just not been what even we should expect from Zach LaVine or what he should expect from himself. When you look at it, the raw data part of it, Zach LaVine is shooting the worst true shooting percentage of his career since his rookie season. His rookie season was the only time he shot a true shooting percentage lower than what it is right now. Also, when you look at his turnover ratio, I don't say he's taking care of the ball way better. He has the lowest turnover ratio of his career this season. Tied for the lowest, 2017-18, he had the same one. But again, that's benefit. Zach LaVine's usage rate is also higher so far this season. But when you look at the play of Zach LaVine, he's 31st right now in the NBA in total scoring in points per game at 22 points per game. Zach LaVine can outright score the basketball. But then you start looking at things, like I said, the true shooting percentage, one of the worst of his career. The field goal shooting percentage overall, 46.3% is his career average. He's shooting at 40.9%. And then you start looking at some of the things like the efficiency, things like that. Zach LaVine's PER, his player efficiency rating, has been on a steady decline since DeMar DeRozan got here. And that's not to say that DeMar DeRozan is the problem. I'm just using that as the data entry point that since DeMar has been here, Zach LaVine went from 21.5 PER that first year, which was the best PER of his career, right? I'm sorry. That was actually the year before DeMar DeRozan got here. So before DeMar DeRozan got here, he had a PER of 21.5, the highest of his career. That's when Zach LaVine was flirting with being a 50, 40, 90 player. And for those that don't know what that means 50% from field goal range, 40% from three, and 90% from free throw range. From free throws. That is the elite mark as far as efficient player, right? So he went from having a PER of 21.5, which was the highest of his career up until that point. The first year of DeMar DeRozan being here, it was 20. The second year dropped down to 19. This year so far, Zach LaVine is having a PER, an efficiency rating of 15.8. What does that say? Zach LaVine is not being efficient by any stretch of the imagination. And while I will say this. His defense has looked better at times when he's out there. Definitely. It seems like Zach LaVine is finally getting to that understanding of how can he affect the game without scoring, right? The rebounds, to getting to the free throw line. We talked about he's getting to the free throw line at a higher rate really than what he's had in his career before. So shout out to Zach for improving those things. But right now, with the Bulls struggling and the Bulls needing somebody who can step in and shoulder some of that offensive load, this is not a time for Zach LaVine to be shooting some of the worst. Now, is it a slump? It definitely could be. It's 10 games into the season. 10 more games from now, we can be talking about a Zach LaVine who's up that PER back to close to 20 and is shooting the ball closer to 45%, 46% from the field overall. That is absolutely possible. You know, much like with the P. Will video yesterday, I like to bring reality into this and say it's not all over yet. But when you go back and look at where this team is right now, Zach LaVine is a player, and the biggest thing that bothers me with Zach LaVine, and I said this in the post-game show yesterday, is Zach LaVine is a player that seems like he's fine with losing. That's the biggest thing. He could talk about and say whatever whatever he says in post conferences and interviews about how losing sucks and they want to get this thing together and all of that. But when you look at Zach LaVine on the court, when some of the biggest moments, yes, he stepped up in big moments as well too. But it seemed like Zach LaVine is fine with losing games. We have seen Zach LaVine smile way too much after losses for me. And like I said in yesterday's post-game show, some of the best players in the NBA are some of the pettiest players in the NBA, meaning when they have a down game or somebody gets to them, they want to deliver right back. The one petty moment I can remember from Zach LaVine is when it was Stephen A. Smith, the game in New York, and Zach LaVine looked at Stephen A. Smith and said, I know you want us to lose tonight, but it's not going to happen, and we went out and got a dub, right? But other than that, it seems I'm not comfortable saying that I feel like the losing is getting to Zach LaVine in a way where he wants to step up and kill the opponent. We saw Bobby Portis talk mad shit to Zach LaVine yesterday. And what did Zach LaVine do? He just took it. Bobby Portis, a former teammate, did they overlap? No, I think they did not overlap any. But and just took it and keep it moving, right? That's not going to that's not what I want from Zach LaVine. And so while Zach LaVine isn't the only problem with the Chicago Bulls, let me be clear there, despite what some people, more hyperbolic commentators will say, he's not a part of the solution, not yet either. And I want to make sure that I say not yet, because I do believe that Zach LaVine absolutely can be part of the solution of what's ailing the Chicago Bulls right now. He more than has the capability. Zach LaVine has the ability to be one of the most efficient scorers in the NBA. I've said it before, he has the ability to be a top 10 to 15 scorer in the NBA, and that is somebody who, while not you just say you're number one, but that is a piece that you can start building things around and hopefully get a better piece to really take you into the stratosphere. But while the Bulls are struggling and everybody in the basketball world is waiting to see if the Chicago Bulls are going to make Zach LaVine or anybody else available, it's a tough, right now, margin to look at Zach LaVine and say he is not part of the problem and the issues facing the Chicago Bulls on this young season. He has to be better. Zach LaVine has to be better for this version of the Chicago Bulls to be a better team. We've talked about like the young players stepping up. Outside of Kobe, it doesn't seem like Kobe and Io, it doesn't seem like that's coming. P. Will isn't making that leap. Dalen Terry isn't contributing. Julian Phillips isn't getting minutes, right? Adama Sanago is rightfully so down in the G League, even though he's absolutely cooking down in the G League. But again, this team needs Zach LaVine. We need him to be a better three-point shooter. Right now, shooting the lowest three-point shooting percentage of his career. You notice how often I'm saying that right now. And I know some people say, is Zach LaVine playing like he wants his way out of here? Is he playing like he's over it? Is he playing like this? Until Zach LaVine is out of a Chicago Bulls uniform, we need Zach LaVine to perform better. Zach LaVine has not been the problem, but he's absolutely not been part of the solution either. And so it's a big part of the problem, big part of it. And like I said, this is not to blame everything on Zach LaVine. This is not a hyperbolic video in that sense, but Zach LaVine has to perform better than what he has. And I get it. He's doing some other things. He's averaging, and even if you say assists, Zach LaVine's tied right now for his lowest assist total of his career. Is that helping the team? No, it's not. He's averaging the second highest of his career, tied for that. He's done that a couple of years at 0.8 steals per game, right? Turnovers per game. Has dropped some for Zach LaVine. He averaged 2.5 last season, now averaging 2.1. But the points per game for Zach LaVine and the efficiency, how that's dropped every single year, is something to be said, right? And to DeMar DeRozan's credit, DeMar DeRozan is taking less shots. He's facilitating more. He's doing all those type of things. So, again, DeMar DeRozan's part of the problem as well. And best believe DeMar DeRozan got a video coming his way as well. This ain't just about Zach. DeMar got that coming as well. But listen, Zach LaVine has to be better. He is paid like a guy that is supposed to be able to put the team on your back. Max level money doesn't mean you're best player in the NBA. Max level money in nowadays in the modern NBA doesn't even mean that you are a number one option. But it does mean that you have an expectation to step up when the game's on the line and make the big and right plays. And we need to see that from Zach LaVine, is to make the right plays. This isn't a video to say that I'm completely out and I'm down on Zach LaVine. This is a video to say that I know Zach LaVine is capable of more, and we need more from Zach because he has the ability to give us more than what we've seen this season. Yes, he started off with a back injury. We know Zach LaVine is one of those players that if he doesn't start off 100%, it's a slow start for him. But we're now 10 games into the season. We need to see that slow start rounding out to better play from Zach LaVine because, again, I make this video because I know Zach LaVine is capable of more, and I want to see more from Zach. This isn't a video to say because I think Zach LaVine is terrible. I'm not one of those Bulls fans that think, oh, just trade Zach and everybody get better. I'm not even one of those Bulls fans that think Zach LaVine is a ball hog because, no, he's played on shitty teams most of his career, and he's adjusted well to what this team is. But we need more from Zach LaVine to help fix what's going on with the Chicago Bulls. We just need it. And even if this team does go retool, we still need more. As long as Zach LaVine is in a Bulls uniform, I know he's capable of more, the expectations for Zach LaVine stay high, rightfully so, not just because of how he's been paid, that's part of it, but also because of what he has shown at times before. Zach LaVine needs to be better. He's not the only one, but he is one that definitely needs to be better, and he needs to own that and start being better for the Chicago Bulls. That's my thoughts. You guys can let me know, as always, what you think down below. Thank you so much for tuning in to this random video on the channel. Make sure you guys are following the channel at Bull Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullcentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the #1 spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, thanks to you guys. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See red if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.